My name is Lacy, and I'm all in for Jesus, but it hasn't always been that way. When I was about 10 or 11 years old, my mom would randomly just take us to church. We would go to one church every 6 months or so, and I would start to like it, but then we would never go back. So I ended up hating the idea of God, the idea of practice religion or anything like that. So I stayed away from it. In high school, I didn't have a relationship with either of my parents, and the relationship between my mother and I was very rocky. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was younger, and to cope with that, she also struggled with alcoholism. Growing up in that environment, I felt very alone. I felt as though no one wanted me because my dad wasn't really around, and mentally, my mom wasn't either. So I fell into my own kind of sin. I ended up becoming very depressed, and some of the people I hung out with started to notice, and they started inviting me to church. So for a couple months, they would invite me, and I just kept telling them no. Those people at church, they don't want me. I don't fit in there, so I'm not gonna go. But I went a Wednesday night, and to me, it didn't seem like church. It seemed too fun to be church. And I kept going for a couple weeks, and every week Pastor Jay would give an invitation for the students who didn't know Christ and didn't know where they would be going if they were to die. So one night he delivered a sermon, but there was also a tornado, and we had to move up to the 112 to finish the evening. And as we walked up there, I kept thinking, okay, so what would happen to me if the tornado did touch down? If something did happen to me, where would I go? So that evening, I looked up to Pastor Jay, and I accepted Christ that night. The next year, I came back to Connect, and Pastor Jay had told me about a Bible study that they were doing at his parents' house with the entire youth group. So I decided to go because I liked what it had seemed like. It was called Life Hurts, God Heals. And through that Bible study, I got closer to some of the leaders down in Connect and some of the students down in Connect. And I saw really the living image of Christ through these people. One day before the Bible study, Pastor Jay had asked me if I wanted to help out with the technology down in Connect. I started doing videos for gladiator games just as a student, and started getting really involved with the church. And with getting involved, I started growing closer to some of the people in the church, from some of the leaders down in Connect to some of the students to just random people that I would come across. ABT became more of a second home to me, and I felt happy, which was different from what I had come from. That next year, I began serving, and I began really seeing what it was to serve. And I had heard Dan Brown of Lift Ministries say, "You're never more like Jesus than when you're serving others." And that really hit me. This summer I've made the decision to go into ministry in some way, shape, or form and use my talents to glorify God for the rest of my life. My name is Lacy, and I'm all in at ABT.